Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Dimensional Walking. I'm Rainbow, and if you're new to the channel, I'm the other half of Dimensional Walking, and Michael also does certain topics on the paranormal, UFOs, and other high strange things. And from my perspective, I usually talk from being an experiencer, so and then an empath as well. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. And I greatly appreciate you all coming and watching our videos. One thing I did want to say is that I know that it's not always easy getting in front of a camera and talking. Sometimes I'll listen to myself when I'm editing the videos and I'm just like, oh my God, just get to the point. Oh, because it's just very hard to sometimes put out what you're trying to say. And if I'm thinking about a topic, all these ideas come to my mind, like if I'm in the shower or if I'm sitting from my desk, and just things will come in and I'll go, oh, that's a cool thing, and I'll write it down. But then when I get in front of the camera, it's a different story, because it's just so hard getting in front and talking about things that are personal. I can get up on stage and perform and dance in front of people, no problem. And I did that for 30 years. But getting in front of a camera and just talking about things that affect me and are part of my life, it's a different story. So for those of you who have been watching our videos, thank you so much for watching them. And, don't be shy if you want to comment in, because Michael and I need to know kind of how you think we're doing, and if there's suggestions. And don't be shy suggesting stuff to us, because we're open. And if you don't agree with some of the stuff I say, feel free to not agree. Just don't call me mean names. But if you want to say I'm full of baloney, then go ahead and tell me that. I don't care. So today's topic, I thought, is important because it's entered my mind as something that a lot of experiencers or abductees go through, and that's voices that they hear. And I think that there's a stigma to even saying you hear voices in your head, because people automatically think, well, you're schizophrenic, you have some mental illness, you're a Looney Tune. And a lot of people who are experiencers or abductees, however you want to say it, have commented that they do hear voices. They'll hear something in their head. And it's an entirely different kind of situation than someone who's having voices in their head telling them to do something that's horrible, or telling them to leave the house, or and I don't mean that in a way like, because I know some experiencers have actually left the house, but I think it's just more of they have their motor skills taken over, and then they're just kind of led out the door. But someone who is dealing with a mental illness, it's nothing to joke about, and it's probably very scary. But it's not like something's coming in and saying for you to hurt another person, or that you need to do this or that. And from the people that I've talked to, and from my own personal experience, there is a huge difference, because none of us have ever been told to do anything horrible or mean to anybody. And when I have somebody coming into, when I was young, it was just like little friends saying, hey, we're going to come see you doing whatever tonight, blah, blah, blah. And I got used to it, because as a child, you're friendly with somebody who's friendly back to you. And then I got used to seeing these little beings, and it was different. So it's not the same as having a strange voice in your head that you don't know who it is, or from wherever it's coming from. Now, I'm going to do a caveat here. There is also a different type of I call it the mind game that's done on people, but I don't think it's aliens. So I'll just say that. So anyways, the one thing that I wanted to start off with is that when I was very young, and I'm talking from the time I probably was 3, going on to 7, I was taken quite often, and I was taught levitation, and I was mind control. Those are the 2 main things that I was taught. Now, when they would talk to me, I would hear a voice, but it was familiar, somebody that I would hear. And it was, I think as a children, that we don't judge a voice. We just hear a voice, and it may have been very different than a human voice, but it still was something that I heard, and it was familiar sounds, familiar words, and I was able to comprehend what they were saying, and that wasn't a problem. And it wasn't a problem at all. So I would only get told things when somebody was going to have contact with me. I wasn't hearing voices outside of that. So I want to make that kind of clear there. So you when there is contact, or when there's going to be contact, is usually when I heard voices. And what's interesting about that is, I think it has to do with the pituitary gland, that third eye that we have, that part of the brain that isn't used as much. It's basically where we are psychic. It's basically where we sense something that we can't necessarily see. We know something's there. It has to do with that connection to the gut feeling, where we actually sense and know when there's danger. It's that fight or flight kind of feeling. But the pineal gland is that part of the brain that I don't think as humans we've learned to use much at all. And I think that's what these little beings come in, the little grays come in, and they use that part of our brain as children. And so we do use that aspect, that part of our brain. So I think that's why children, as they get older, are more empathic or psychic, because there's a part of the pineal gland, or using the pineal gland is actually the reason why, because we're used to using it and for doing really kind of unique things. So therefore, we have that capability, that little opening, that part of the brain where we're using it just a little bit more than the average person who's saying that they don't have these experiences, which is, there's no problem there. I mean, that's fine. But I think that when as kids, when we experience stuff like this, the one thing that is interesting is the psychic experiences start happening a lot more, because I've always stated that anybody who does have experiences like this, they deal with the paranormal on a constant level. And the more that I remember being taken, the more paranormal happened with me, and my family knew it as well. So it wasn't like just little odd paranormal poltergeisty stuff happening. It was actually having spirits talking to me, which, again, that's something else. And I think that opens up the paranormal, because when you're working with the pineal gland and it's opened, you can hear a lot more things that you didn't hear before. So I think entity, or spirits on the ethereal side, some who've passed on, maybe others who are dimensional, who knows, sense when you have that opening where you're more empathic, or more, you're able to hear what they have to say. So I think that's why the paranormal happens more, is because the pineal gland is open more so than the average person. But that's just my opinion. So the next thing is, and I've heard of it a little bit. Have you heard from the videos that I've listened to, people talking about different effects that happen to children who have had abductions and experienced the little gray guys, or whoever they're experiencing. It could be mantids or whatever. But when I was about, I think I was about 6 or 7, I had a hard time of hearing, and my family was already dealing with the fact that the school that I was going to said I was retarded and that I had a learning disability, um, and the problem that I was experiencing was, and it wasn't really a problem, is these little gray guys were talking to me in my head and teaching me without using their mouth. They were using telepathy. And so that's how I was learning up until the time I went to the 1st grade. I didn't go to preschool. I just went straight into 1st grade. So when I was in school, I had a hard time dealing with the curriculum. So my parents were kind of struggling, trying to figure out how was the best way to help me get ahead in school, because I was behind the other kids in everything. And that affects you for the rest of your life. It really does, when you have people telling you that you have a mental problem and you don't. It's just, and if those teachers could have known exactly what was happening to me, I don't know if it would have changed anything. I mean, they probably would have just thought that my family was nuts if they didn't experience it themselves. But anyways, so I had this wax in my ear, and whether we thought something was wrong with my ear, they didn't know quite what it was at the time. But my mom and dad took me to what are they called? I have it down here. An ENT, an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And I got taken in, and of course they do this horrible thing where they spray water in your ear and just kind of clean it out and see what's going on in there. And the doctor didn't find anything wrong with my hearing, but a lot of wax came out of my ears. I mean, so much so that it shocked even the doctor. It shocked my parents, it shocked me, it shocked the doctor. And I did notice that I could hear much better. And I think my parents were thinking, oh, well, she couldn't hear, so therefore, maybe that was the problem with her learning issues. But I do know that when there's trauma, constant trauma, or a lot of trauma happening to children, that they can develop wax in their ears. And that wasn't the only time. At different points throughout my life, that same thing has happened. And I know what it's from. I'm thinking, gosh, am I still dealing with trauma? It could be life. It's not just experiencing the paranormal or being abducted. It can be life trauma as well. But it kind of has plagued me my whole life, and that's kind of the after effects of actually experiencing hearing these little beings and learning from them. And then I think it also has to do with other stuff, because I don't think that once you're taken by these beings that it's not noticed. I think that it is noticed by maybe other groups. And I don't want to always say that hearing this kind of stuff, I'm going to target and point to one group and say it's the Greys, because it's not just them. It can be anybody. And so that's kind of where, for me, I think it's important to state that there's other groups that are coming in, and it could be, Black Ops, it can be different groups who have different agendas. Because there's the stuff like the Manchurian Candidate and the MK Ultra stuff. And so as I got older, what was really interesting is then I started hearing other stuff. And it wasn't just so much me hearing it, it was my friends hearing it. But one thing I do want to say that my senior year in high school, I stopped hearing anything. I didn't hear that frequency hum. I didn't hear, they didn't ever come and say, hey, we're going to see you or do whatever. I mean, it stopped. I actually had peace of mind for a whole year. So I think they just kind of let me enjoy my senior year of high school, which was really cool. But then it started right back up. And, that's just the way it goes. I mean, it was about a year later. But as I got older, I wasn't so much in front of a computer because I work cattle. But I noticed that when I was more around electronics or the cell phone, for example, that I could start hearing different things. And then, of course, the frequencies came in even more. And I think that just has to do with the pineal gland. I think that people just, if you don't freak out about hearing that kind of stuff, it's important to understand that it's just because you have maybe an ability to hear stuff that not everybody else can hear. And I think the reason why I went into dance and the reason why I enjoyed choreography and live bands and dancing to and constantly dancing, practicing and teaching and all that stuff is because the music kind of drowned out what I was hearing. So I think you kind of end up doing the different things that you need to do in order to be sane. And so that's what I did to be sane. And, when I was on a horse and riding out in the plains, it didn't really bother me if I heard different sounds because I was just enjoying being out. In the evening, it probably was the hardest time because that's when I would hear a lot of stuff. And it's really interesting out on the open range because I would be living on ranches in Mexico and here in the United States, such as a lot in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and Colorado. And so the nighttime, even with it so quiet out, I could still hear all these different sounds. And I think I came to peace with it. Otherwise, I would have just got insane. And you just can't go insane with this stuff. But I think what helped me out when I was in my late 20s and in my 30s is that I wasn't just experiencing all these strange clicks sounds on my phone and in my computer. I actually had friends who experienced it with me. And they would tell me, Rainbow, you're the only person that this happens to. Well, with whenever they would talk to me, it would just seem like there were clicks and there were voices. And I'd say, did you hear that? And they'd say, yeah, I hear that. And we'd be hearing other people talking in the background. And they just say, well, we just don't have anybody else this happens to. Only when we talk to you. And I started to feel a little upset about it for a while, but then I just decided just to get over it because you just can't let stuff like this ruin your life or rule your life or lead you, to depression, because it actually can make you very depressed. But one of the instances what was really interesting is a friend of mine and I were talking, and it happened a lot when I was talking to her, where we would be talking and we obviously it was all about dance. And we would hear the voice in the background, and we actually heard two people. And I said, do you hear this voice? And she said, I hear this voice. And she said, and I'm getting really tired of this. She said, whoever you are, she said, it's rude to listen to people's conversations. And I'm like, yeah. I said, if you're not going to join in the conversation, get off the line. And we heard a man's voice, and then he clicked. And he was off our conversation. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. He kind of listened to what we had to say. Or maybe they were just shocked that we heard them. But after a while, you just kind of get tired of that kind of stuff. And there was an instance with my computer, which was really interesting. I had my two speakers on either side of my computer. And I was getting ready to sit down and create some choreography for my next class of students that I was having. And I used to like to do solo choreographies, group choreographies. And so what I would do is I would sit down and I would figure out what I was going to do. And I'd be working right and left brain. And then I try to figure out the music and have a lot of fun doing it. But while I'm getting prepared to do this, usually I'll just turn my computer on and get myself ready. And I was sitting there, and I just come and sat down and was preparing for my class because I was going to type it all up. And I heard a man and a woman, and they're asking each other, "Do you think she can hear us?" And the other person, I think, I don't know if it was the man or the woman, but they said, "Oh, I don't think she can hear us." And I'm like, "That's weird. You know, that's just really crazy." And so I thought it must be something weird coming into my speakers or whatever. And so I heard them talking. And so I turned my computer completely off and then turned it back on. And I didn't hear anything. And I was really happy about that because I thought, well, I'm going to be playing music anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I heard them again. And same thing. "Do you think that she can hear us?" And the other person said, "No, I don't think she can." And I thought, well, I'm just going to chime in here because I can hear you. And I said, "I can hear you." And then one of them said, "Did she just say she could hear us?" And I said, "Yep, I can hear you." And they freaked out and they started talking, but they never got off. And I thought, oh, this is just insane. I mean, oh my God, I have to get my work done and I can hear people in my speakers. And I knew that they could hear me at that point because they were freaking out that because I'd stated that I could hear them. And so I just put my music on. I got to my choreography and then I was in another world because that's what dance was for me. It just put me in a place where I could actually be alive and be me and just enjoy myself. And within 15 minutes, they were gone. And that's kind of important to note because you just really have to kind of put your boundaries down and just tell them, yeah, I can hear you or whatever, and just continue on with your life and do what you enjoy doing. I didn't want any more of my life as it was to be ruled by all this strangeness that was happening constantly around me. I just didn't want to have to deal with it. And so I do think that there's other groups that do come in if they do find out somebody is abducted or experiencing strange stuff. I think they do come in to kind of see, well, who is this person? Why are these beings interested in them? And they try to kind of figure out and find out information about who that person is. So I don't think it's too strange if you've had experiences with, the Greys or whoever, to actually have other groups interested in you to find out, well, why are they interested in you? They're going to be curious and they're going to try to find out, or maybe they already know. That's something that I've never quite figured out. And I think it's important to understand that you don't know what groups you're dealing with, so you can't really pinpoint it. But as far as the hearing different voices, just understand that the difference in hearing voices, different types of voices, is one group will be coming in, like the group that, maybe they're Black Ops, I don't know who they are. They're coming in and they're having their own conversations, but you can hear it. Or they'll be listening and you hear the clicks. Or you'll hear someone say something in the background of a conversation. And so that's kind of something entirely different than with the little gray guys coming in and saying, hey, we're going to come and grab you tonight, or hey, we want you to do this or do that. Meaning, if when I was with them, that they'd want to show me how to do stuff and they'd be training me to do stuff. So there is a difference. I've never been afraid of the grays. I think that as far as the other group, they kind of let me alone. I don't really hear them much anymore, and I'm very appreciative of that. But I still hear the frequencies, the different types of frequencies. And actually, just recently, I well, actually not recently. I guess it was back about 3 or 4 years ago. My ears were hurting me, and I couldn't figure out why. And so I went to the doctor again, the ears, nose, and throat doctor. And I was tested, and I was put into that padded little room, and they did all these frequency noises, and I could hear them all because that's how they test your hearing. And so they were testing to see if I had hearing loss, what was going on. And when I came back into the office, he told me that I had the hearing of a 10-year-old. And he said I was the first person my age. It kind of made me feel old, even though I was in my, let's see, 54, 53 at the time. He said that I was one of the first people that he'd heard of. He's heard of it, but I was the first person that came to his office that actually had the hearing of a 10-year-old at my age. He said nothing was wrong with my ears, and I was fine. And so, so maybe just hearing the frequencies and hearing all the stuff that I hear makes me a little more sensitive to stuff. I do notice that if there's elevation changes, sometimes I'm in a lot of pain and other times I'm not. It just kind of depends. So who knows? I don't really know how to explain it. But I don't want anybody who's experiencing this to feel like you're alone and that you can't talk about it, because it's something that's kind of hidden away because people don't want to be thought of as crazy. And I'm not crazy. I mean, well, if you ask Michael, maybe I am a little bit, but not in a good way, not in a bad way. He basically tells me I'm a drama queen, which is probably true, but that has nothing to do with hearing voices. That's just my personality. But anyways, I don't want you to think that that you're out there alone and you can't talk about it, because I'm talking about it. Hey, it's a fact of experiencing all of this. You could hear stuff like that, and it doesn't mean that you're nuts. It just means you have to put it in the right context and not let it rule your life, and try to figure out different ways to get around it. Like for me, it's music. I love to hear music, all kinds of music. And if I have a problem with frequencies at night, I'll take something to help me go to sleep so that I can not hear them. And the one thing too is that when I've had other groups come and talk to me, like the Sasquatch, it's an entirely different experience, because Sasquatch has a way of helping, of kind of enveloping you, making you feel safe and making you feel good. The first time I ever experienced a Loki, a Sasquatch, an Oregonian Sasquatch, I was a little uncomfortable because I was in the shower. But he came through because when I was in the shower, because of water. The water is a conduit, and he was able to talk to me. But that's an entirely different experience too, because you're actually hearing their true voice, and it's obviously not yours, and you can hear it, but you hear it here, you hear it here. And when you're hearing it in your head, it's an entirely different experience. I don't know. I think there's something to telepathy. I don't know if I think if we could all learn how to use the pineal gland, I mean, we'd have probably entirely different lives. I wish I could remember how to do half the stuff they taught me when I was a child. Maybe it's still in me. I have blocked it, or it was blocked. I don't know. But I think if we can kind of focus in on the parts of our brain that we don't use very often, which maybe is what all these other groups, which are the alien groups, use. We need to start doing it. I think that we need to kind of change how we communicate. And I think if we can learn how to meditate and focus and actually figure out how to get to those places in our brain and affect our lives for the better, I think that we'd probably be in a different type of world. I mean, just imagine. Probably a lot of amazing technology could come out of that. That's probably why some people just have an ability to do amazing things, because parts of their brains they have access to that the rest of us don't. I don't know. But it could have something to do too, I think, with remote viewing. I mean, I'm not sure on that. I mean, it can be anything. But I do think that maybe remote viewing has something to do with it. I think that if you can retrain your brain and focus in on things, I think that it changes everything. I'm trying to find something here because I had written something that I thought was really interesting. Let's see here. I think it was, oh yeah. Ingo Swann stated that he was a conscious researcher who had sometimes experienced altered states of consciousness. And it's basically kind of what I think we call remote viewing today. And I think remote viewing does have a lot to do with the pineal gland and actually working that part of the brain that we normally don't use. And so I think that people who are experiencers and abductees probably would be really good remote viewers because they're already used to using that part of their brain. I have never tried remote viewing. I've been intrigued by it, but who knows? Maybe I'll try it down the line. But anyways, that's kind of all I have to say about hearing voices. I've lately been hearing negative things about people who are mentally ill who have heard voices, and I just wanted to just state my opinion on there's a huge difference between what we experience as experiencers and what people experience who are mentally ill. And God bless them, because I mean, that can't be easy. And it's not easy for us either. But if you have any questions regarding this topic, feel free to email me at dimensionalwalking@gmail.com, because I'd like to hear what you have to say. And if you have questions, maybe we can put our heads together and figure out the answers. The only way we're going to find answers is if we actually go out there together and try to find them. Because I think that what Michael and I, more so than anything, is we're trying to go out there and definitely look for answers. And I'm not waiting for someone to find the answers for me. I'm trying to figure it out as I go along. So I think that's important to state. And listen, if you want to say something, please do, because Michael and I need comments and we need the thumbs up if you like the videos, because we are just getting started and we're just trying to figure it all out. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I greatly appreciate you listening in, And I wish you all the best. Appreciate you watching. Michael and I really appreciate the people who have subscribed. If you want to send this off to somebody who's maybe experiencing something, similar with the voices, send this video to them. Let them know they're not alone. I think if we can just understand that we're not alone, and we're in this together, then we'll find the answers together. So thank you. Take care, and we'll talk soon.